Hi, I was going through the news. I know I shouldn't have done that, right? Anyways, so seeing that there's a school, I want to say North Carolina. Well, anyways, 12 students they didn't put that are disabled. They didn't put in the school yearbook. And it kind of got me thinking, pretty much the path I've gone on. And I'm so thankful that my boys are done with the school system, the education system. But it got me thinking, what people really don't know about autistic families. So my oldest son, his birthday's coming up on the 17th, is a level 4 autism. That is somebody who needs total support, total care, one-on-one assist, semi-nonverbal. I can go on and on and on. The doctor, he's now going to be 26. The doctor, when he was about 2 years old, said, he'd be lucky to make it to 18. IEP meetings, doctors, therapy. It takes a lot, and it drains you a lot. And I don't usually talk about it because a lot of people don't get it. When you go, now it doesn't bother me as much, but back in the day, you would go, you have your child, they're not meeting those benchmarks. They're not doing this, they're not doing that. You go in and you're wanting answers. What is going on? What can I do? Or then you have that, what have I done wrong? That guilt. And so then after you go through that phase and you start going to those IEP meetings, therapy meetings, you go in, you're already pretty much tired because the mental drain. You go in and there's a table, sometimes you're offered something to drink, sometimes you're not. And then all these people that don't know you come in with their papers, and then everybody starts talking about, this is what your child's not doing, this is what your child is doing, that so forth and so forth. Everybody goes around the table and has their little spiel. This can be very emotionally draining to an autistic parent. Okay? They are hearing the negative and the positive about their child. And so forth and so forth. And they have the IEP when they get older that's supposed to be met by the teachers and the school staff. Sometimes you get good teachers. I've been blessed. My other son, that's a higher functioning. He was blessed with having some amazing teachers. But my other son didn't have that. So, you get those teachers that are burned out. They're just there. They don't even want to be there anymore. The behaviors with level 4, then they're short-staffed. He's a one-on-one assist. And there was times when he didn't have that one-on-one because paras call in, staffing call in, then you have to pull somebody else in. It actually can stress the school system and the education system also. With that being said, let's talk about shopping. Taking a higher needs out shopping. I've literally had people come to me and tell me that people like him should not be in the store because he's excited, saying, what he wants over and over. He's excited about being there, getting his stuff, and seeing life as a joy. And she was actually a secretary of a church. So I did catch her outside and let her know that behavior was inappropriate. Um, Socialization, they're already delaying in that. I've had other incidences throughout his span of life growing up to, just taking back how society really is. Um, like I said, the parents are already drained. It's emotionally draining. It's financially draining. It's spiritual draining. And then you start getting that isolation where I've been through it. You see other kids going out doing this and doing that, and you're watching and you're like, my kid can't do that. You start isolating that because you know it. And then you have that, I wish my kid could do that. And then you have the other parents who don't invite you. They don't invite the kids, but you don't get invited either. And when you do, by the time you're invited, you really don't want to go anymore. It also breaks down the family. The family support. A lot of the families end up getting divorced because of the strain. The domestic goes up because of the strain. The lack of sleep thereof strains you. It takes a lot out of you. See, that's why I do so much meditation. That's why I talk about, staying balanced, centered, and doing all that. But we're not going to talk about that right now. Society doesn't see the emotional strain that it can cause on an autistic family. The caregivers, the parents, even, school staffing. You get some, like I said, some teachers that will listen and be like, okay, what can we do? How can we do this? You got to think outside the box. You got to have that creative thinking. And then you get some of the teachers that just, they don't like the parent, or they just, they know your child better than you do. And that's when autistic parents learn really fast, really hard, step on toes, be a strong advocate, and, speak up for your child, because your child can't speak. I've lost a lot of friends because of my advocacy. Well, they don't like me going out and, letting people know that, hey, this is not right. You don't do this because you're hurting Joe Blow's feelings. I personally didn't care who Joe Blow was. You don't come home at my house. I don't go to your house. But I do know you need to meet that IEP. But anyways, my other son, he's more able to vocalize and talk. And again, the same isolation within the facilities in the towns. He's, higher functioning, but doesn't have the strong social cues that deemed society seems to be fitting. Again, the IEPs and all that, same thing, physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, I can go on. But he's dealt with more of the bullying amongst the schools, kids in school, kids outside of school. He's had to handle more of that because don't meet the society norm. I can go on and on, but that's his story. If he ever feels like he wants to tell that story, he can. But I've literally had called the cops on some kids at one point because they were trying to drown him at the pool and was calling him names. That was just a couple of years ago. Alex is 6'2". You guys have seen him in my videos. He's 6'2". These are just little elementary school kids. He's now, at that time, I think he was 17. And, luckily Alex did not interact and just kind of got out of the pool and came home and told me about it. The pool manager wouldn't do nothing about it. She didn't know. So anyways, but we got it taken care of. We found out who it was, and I had the police go talk to the family. Because we all know if Alex would have reacted with his height, his size, it would have been bad for the kid. Alex did the right thing. And who would have gotten in trouble? It would have been Alex. So That happens a lot within the town. I even went, and it happens with me too, um, to a church thing. It was a college thing where all the college kids all go. I went in, and one of the secretaries from another church had literally came up to me while I'm here for my other son, showing him support, because that is just a path he wants to go down, and I'm going to support that path and be there for him. Came up to me and asked me if my other child, the one that's really autistic, level 4, still in home with me. I was like, yeah, sure is, because I do in-home care now with him. And then she kind of walked and sat down. She's the same secretary. This is backing up again. The same secretary when I was at church because I wanted to go check it out for Mother's Day. This was many moons ago. Ian was sitting, that's his name, was sitting at the little picnic table in this nursery, watching the service on the TV. Came and told me, pulled me out of the sanctuary, came and told me that I needed to go home and get my son because he was scaring the other students in the nursery. Yeah, so I go get my son, and they're all holding their kids like, "Ah." My son was just sitting quietly at the table, watching the TV. That's a whole nother story. So, but this is just small, little details, just a little insight of what, not just my family, but I've also talked to some other families, deal with when you're raising autistic children or a child with disability, the judgmental attitudes. Like I said, we are already mentally drained. We're already dealing with a lot. We don't need the condescension, the attitude from society. But it happens. Just like these kids, not getting their pictures, the disabled students not getting their pictures in the news, in the yearbook. That was done on purpose. You just don't forget 12 disabled students. That was done on purpose. And it really needs to stop. We should be accepting of all people. Not just, you can go run $100, do this in football, do that in football. That needs to stop. Just because you're different or you have a disability does not make you any less of a person. Because I'm going to tell you something right now. You can learn a lot more from the disability community than you can Karen and all the Joe Blows. Because, society, when it comes right down to it, it's all about the way you look, the way you talk, the way you dress, no matter where you are, and how much money you have. But money is the root of all evil. So it's just really sickening to hear and still see that here we are, 2026, that we still have that kind of mindset going. It's just repulsive. And, and if you are an autistic parent and you have to go in all those meetings, I've been there. I know it's draining. But that does get better. It does get better. My oldest son, they said he'd never walk. He does walk with a wide gait. Said he would never talk. He does talk. But, sometimes he doesn't put all those sentences together. But he does talk. He wasn't going to make it to 18. He's now going to be, his birthday's coming up. He's going to be 27, actually. 27. I always forget birthday. I'm terrible with that. 27. Everything they said he cannot do, he does it. So it does get better. It does get better. My other son, they've said that he can't do a lot of stuff, and he's doing them. So when you go into those meetings, take a deep breath before you go in. And, listen to what they're saying, but do not feel like you can't speak your mind. Most of those IEPs have the parental concerns. Make sure your concerns are in those parental concerns, because later on, if you have to go back and change that IEP, It's right there. You've already mentioned it, and it's in the group, and everybody signs that at the end of the day. Don't feel bad about putting your concerns in there. And don't let them intimidate you about putting your concerns in there, because sometimes they will. I've been through that too. So anyways, so my word of advice, you're not alone. And doing a good job. Keep it up. Bye.